Hello there and welcome back to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your host, Mr. Laz and on the screen opposite me, Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, bro?
All good, brother. I hope everyone's doing well. Yeah, being okay.
Good. This is actually a different kind of episode we're doing today. We haven't done one of these before. We came up with the idea last week when we were chatting about stuff, and we thought, why not talk about our favourite covers? Because covers are such a fundamental instrumental part of music, don't you think? I find it's something that a lot of people don't. I know people talk about covers, but you never think of it. When you say one of the fundamentals of music, what matters, or being a good songwriter, having good instrumentalists, writing, a good album artwork and everything. But I think cover songs are actually quite an underrated part of being a musician and an artist, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. And I think there's a distinction between covers and versions of songs, right? When you say cover, I imagine someone just playing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Or trying to emulate the original. And then when you do a version of a song, you actually do it in your own way. And that has happened in the history of music since the very beginnings. Also, think about classical music, right? All the classical composers, they couldn't record a live album or anything like that at the time. So everything that we hear nowadays is like people's interpretations of their masterpieces. But obviously they have the music score to make sure they have all the music sheet to make sure they're playing note by note as it was meant to be played. But even with classical music, even trying to play note by note, a different room with a different instrument, different player makes the song sound different. And in rock and roll, the same thing happens, And how many songs that are really famous were not written by the person who's singing or playing them,
We spoke about one recently, didn't we, in the Don McLean episode last week, how he really influenced that song by Laurie Lieberman, and it was then covered by what's her name, Roberta Flack.
Yeah.
And Bob Dylan, he's someone who we're going to talk about today, and he's one of those people who is notorious for, you hear a song and you're like, oh yeah, no, they covered this. They covered it. Well, who's the original by? Dylan, of course.
I'll give you one good example. First time I've heard "Knock on Heaven's Door," I was a teenager, and I thought that was a Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
And then someone told me, no, that's Bob Dylan. And as I grew older, I met some young people who thought that was an Avril Lavigne song.
I didn't even know that she covered it, but that is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like generations, isn't it? If you were in the 50s and 60s, it was Dylan. If you were in the 80s and 90s, it was Guns N' Roses. If you're the 2000s, it's Avril Lavigne.
I'd actually heard people say, how stupid are you? That's not Avril Lavigne. That's Guns N' Roses. I said, oh, right.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, so this is the point of what we're going to do for these episodes. We kind of thought this would be really cool because essentially there's a limitless amount we can do. We're going to take two of Felipe's favourite covers, two of my favourite covers and discuss them. However, that is just for this episode. For the future episodes, we want to hear you guys' favourite cover. You guys have got to tell us what your favourite cover is, and we're going to, the ones that kind of resonate with us, as much as I'd love to talk about, Miles Davis covering a Charlie Parker song, it doesn't quite fit the rock and roll narrative of this.
Exactly.
But let us know, I put some posts on the socials a couple of weeks ago, and I put some more up today. We want to hear what your favourite covers are, and if they're rock and roll enough, rock enough, metal enough, proggy enough, whatever, we're going to bring them into the discussion. Because whether we like them or not, or whether we've heard the cover before or not, it's just interesting to hear one musician or one band take a song and interpret it. We're doing some songs today that we're going to go through, and I'd say two of them are almost like for like, and two of them have been quite drastically changed. And it's just brilliant to get an insight, from our opinion, of what we think this artist was doing. So let's crack on with it. The first song we're going to do, it's a choice of mine, and it is Metallica doing Whiskey in the Jar. Now, I saw Metallica a few weeks ago at Download play this song, and they covered it, and the crowd went nuts for it. They absolutely loved it because although it's not a Metallica tune per se, it's fun, it's energetic, it's bouncy. And when they started playing it, everyone was kind of expecting another old Metallica tune. They'd just done Battery and like One or whatever, and then they came out with this, and you just realize that actually it's because it's a song that gets the crowd going. And I think part of that is down to Metallica's performance of it, because you compare it to what we call the original, the Thin Lizzy version. More on the history of this song in a minute, but the Thin Lizzy version is very relaxed, isn't it? And it's almost it's almost melancholic. There's a sadness about it, isn't it? Despite the nice melodies, there is just this underlying melancholy to it, don't you think?
Yeah, and that might be the difference between being from this side of the world from another side of the pond, isn't it? If you think about America and the UK and Ireland, it's a different vibe, isn't it? It's a different culture in many ways. And some people would say, I know this is like stereotypes, but some people would say the Americans are more cheerful and British and Irish would be more, I don't know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say sad,
I know what you
but
mean. Yeah,
yeah, it's just maybe that's part of the cultural difference in the song. Also, I think there's a difference in the way things are recorded nowadays and things were recorded in the past. Metallica's version was it's quite recent in their career. I mean, it was kind of quite a few years ago, but they've been around for ages. So it's not one of their first releases. So it's already it has been already recorded in a time where you would edit the drums to the grid and you would compress the guitar levels, etc., etc. So it sounds a bit more modern and maybe a bit more powerful and loud in a certain way, which is kind of the more modern way of recording rock. And I would argue for that reason, the original one swings a bit more. It's like in a very musical way, it's slightly more sloppy.
Yeah, no,
does that
right.
make sense?
Yeah, no, and I think, do you know what? When I was listening to it, when I was hearing it, a part of the big difference for me is that Metallica's version has a lot more lead guitar going on. Now, this is either in the form of dueling and doubling up and harmonizing that lead, or when, just at the end of a vocal phrase, he might do a little, something like that, just a little thing. And I felt that lent itself more towards the rock. And I was thinking, wow, the Metallica version has so much more lead guitar. And then I went back and listened to the Thin Lizzy version, and I thought, actually, do you know what? This has a lot of guitar in it anyway, and it's just the production that makes it evident. Because the Thin Lizzy one, excuse me, it's almost like there's a guitar, there's a lead guitar, almost doubling filled in its vocal line throughout the verses. And then even when he's, that final verse is some man like a dun, you got the guitar going, and just changing the rhythms and the melodies going behind it. And I thought that when you analyze it, it really does sound like a band playing in a room together compared to Metallica, which is an obvious, studio recording.
Yeah, it is. It's more back in the 70s and 60s, people would record live to a certain extent. Even if you're overdubbing vocals, you're probably going to get rhythm guitar, bass, drums, and maybe a piano recorded live, playing together with no click. There's no metronome. So that's basically another big difference, I think. I doubt Metallica recorded that track without a click. So and certainly Thin Lizzy did without one. So that's a big thing. I want to know your opinion about the guitar solo.
Okay.
Because I think even like on Metallica's version, it's not a metal solo to me. For me, there's a very classic rock solo. The way,
bro, listen, you say that, but not just the solo. I think the song I've put here, I don't think this would sound any different if you asked a non-metal band to do this. So what I'm saying is, if you just any rock band, pick a rock band, and I think you said to them, cover Thin Lizzy's Whiskey in the Jar, you're going to get the same results. Because, excuse me, I was listening to it and I thought, you associate it with Metallica. Why? Because Metallica are metal. It's obvious. But this song is almost like a rock song, isn't it? It's a rock cover. And like I said, I just think that there's not enough heaviness to it for it to be considered heavy metal. And I think what you said, the guitar solo is really important. The other thing about Metallica is that when they were, obviously, we've done our episode on Metallica, so go back and check that out. But you had that thrash era where they were playing that really heavy music, and James Hetfield was in this process of shouting the lyrics and stuff, and sort of slowly between, I'd say it was from the late 80s through to the end of the 90s, he'd learned to sing, as in get rid of that shout and bring his sing back into his voice. And I think he's got a certain kind of, and this might sound weird, I think he's got a certain kind of country to his vocals.
Man, there's a lot of country.
Yeah, you agree?
Vocals, in my opinion. So glad. I don't think it's a little bit. There's a lot of it, because it gets kind of it's kind of hidden in the middle of all the aggressive tone of his voice and the distortion in his voice. Yeah. But his vocal phrasings are quite like Western, like proper American country music. In my opinion, they even have a really country song. Is it, what's the name of that one? Mama Said. Is it?
Oh yeah. I think that's from the Reload album.
That's a country song. You can call it what it is, but that's a country song. But so there is. I think what they did, and they did really well, was to not try to sound like Metallica, because there's no way they wouldn't sound like themselves. Yeah. That's the thing. When people try too hard, they sound artificial. It's like, let's turn this heavy metal song into a jazz, or vice versa. So you're just like really trying hard to turn into something else. If you pick someone else's song and just play it note by note, even with the same instrument, you are going to sound slightly different, because you are a different person and your interpretation is different. So basically what Metallica did, in my opinion, they were like, well, remember that song? Probably all of us have learned that song when we were teenagers, whatever. Shall we just play? And they played, and sounds like a band rehearsing. That's what it sounds like. And trying to sound like the original, but naturally you have your own expression.
Imprinting their own sound.
But without overthinking it, without, let's put a bit of Metallica vibe right here. I don't think they did that. I think it's just like trying to sound like the original and sounding, like themselves, because they can't avoid it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And I think I was going to say something interesting to talk about is actually the root of the song, because for those who don't know, it's not a Thin Lizzy song. It is a traditional Irish folk song. And there is a great version that we'll put in the playlist. So what we're going to do for these episodes, these cover episodes, for the playlist, we're going to give you the song we're talking about. So it'll be Whiskey in the Jar, and then the original track / reference track. So in this case, it would be Thin Lizzy's Whiskey in the Jar. But then any other songs we mention, any other versions of it, or, Felipe Said, Mama Said, they'll all be in the playlist as well. And one I'm going to stick in is going to be the Dubliners, who are an Irish vocal folk group who covered this song in 1968, which is 5 years before Thin Lizzy's version came out. And it's a proper old Irish jig. So, it's all the I first produced my pistol, like that. and that was a West Country Cornish accent. Sorry to the Irish out there. Sorry, I am half Cornish. So, my Irish isn't great. But the thing that I found funny, and the reason why I put Thin Lizzy in this playlist instead of the Dubliners, is because the chorus melody is the same. It goes Masharena Badu Bada Bada. They kind of rhythmic is a bit different. But the one thing that Metallica, that Thin Lizzy did, that was that was innovative in their cover, was the guitar melody, which I think is really important to the song.
Yeah, and exactly, and
such an important element to both covers, isn't it?
And that's what Metallica is covering. They're not trying to sound like a traditional Irish band. They're trying to sound a little bit like Thin Lizzy. That's the version they're actually covering. And Thin Lizzy turned that song into a rock song. That is a rock song now because of them.
Sorry, go on.
Because of Thin Lizzy's version, that has become a rock song. Yes, it's not a folk song anymore.
And something interesting? You sent me the Bryan Adams cover of this song as well. And that doesn't have a guitar melody.
No.
It doesn't have the...
It's just acoustic guitar and harmonica, and that's it.
So it doesn't make you wonder, what's he covering? Is he covering the Dubliners version? Is he covering Thin Lizzy's version?
Yeah, what was the first version of that song he's heard? Maybe it was his uncle playing guitar in the living room. We never know.
Exactly. Brilliant stuff. Did you have anything else to say about that song?
No, we can move on. What's the next one?
I thought something that would be really cool to do is at the end of each song, you and me say the original, or the cover?
Oh, that's
And it's
tough
purely
call.
personal, no judgment coming. Give
Yeah.
your reasons for it. But I think that'd be really cool to do. And guys at home, if you're watching along, let us know in the comments of these covers. Which one do you prefer, the original or the cover? So Felipe, Metallica's Whiskey in the Jar or Thin Lizzy's Whiskey in the Jar?
Thing Lazy.
And I have to say the same. Yeah, Metallica's is great. It's a great rock tune, and it's a very respectable cover. But there is something emotional about that Thin Lizzy version, isn't there? Like I said right at the start, it is melancholic. It has a hint of sadness to it, and I think that's done by the wonderful playing of the band and Phil Lynnett's expressive vocals.
Yeah, he was one of a kind as a
Yeah,
musician. That's the other thing,
yeah.
Not saying that the James Hetfield is not one of a kind as well,
No, of course, yeah,
but that's pure like classic rock, really.
yeah.
And I love his performance, his vocals, and yeah, I'll go with the original. But Metallica did a phenomenal job. So
Yeah, there we go. Two to the originals.
yeah,
Right, so the next song we're going to do, this one is for one of Felipe's choices. We are doing All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix. Do you want to kick it off, Felipe? I mean, I'll tell them that the original is obviously by Bob Dylan from 1967. Hendrix did it the same year, didn't he?
yeah. Yes, I think he's heard the song he wants to record, but Hendrix recording of that song, it took loads of attempts, many overdubs. There's a lot of instruments to the point that at the time you had a limit of how many tracks you could have in a song. It's not like nowadays you can open hundreds of tracks on Logic Pro or any recording software. At the time you had a limit, so recording to tape, and they had to choose things to leave out of the the recording. And there was a funny thing that the bass player quit. What's his name? Noel Redding. He just said, "I just don't want to do this. I don't like it. I prefer the original. What we're doing is not good enough." And he didn't quit the band. It's just like, I don't want to do this song. And then there was a guy, forgot his name. Sorry, but we can figure out later and put on the credits at the end. But there's the session guy playing 12-string guitar in that song, and then he played the bass. And then apparently Hendrix recorded the bass himself at the end. So he was trying really hard to make one of his favorite songs sound even better than the original. He was really committed to turn into something else. It wasn't just, okay, I'm just going to cover Bob Dylan as Bob Dylan. And to compare to the original, I would say there's one interesting element that Dylan put in the song. There's some drums in it. And you have what I usually call the Motown groove. Most Motown songs in the chorus, you have the snare playing on all four beats. Whilst like, not getting too technical here, but when in a normal pop rock song, you have a snare on beats 2 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And Motown songs in the chorus, they usually have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. The snare drum playing on every beat. And Dylan did that. Like, it's not aggressive, but it's there, and it's more evident in Hendrix's version because he's got a tambourine on top of it, like kind of emphasizing that rhythm. So there's a lot more percussion and loads of layers of acoustic and electric guitars in Hendrix's version of it. That's the one big difference. But I'll mention a couple of other things. Dylan's version is like empty in a certain way. And there's not much production or arrangement. So it's all down to his performance, his vocal interpretation. And I'll be honest, I don't want to criticize one of the biggest geniuses in music, but the harmonica in that song is quite annoying, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of harmonica. It's just
I can't disagree.
So harmonica is one of the 4 instruments of the apocalypse, isn't it? It's like
what are the other 3?
Ukulele and
triangle.
No, bagpipe. There's one more. Banjo.
Banjo. Okay, there you go. Brilliant.
The definition of a gentleman is a guy who owns a harmonica but doesn't play it.
For the sake of everyone else.
It's a gentleman. What's a gentleman? I think removing the harmonica and playing the riffs on electric guitar with that distortion, with that bluesy vibe, because it's quite bluesy. It's like, if you listen to Freddie King and Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy, that's the kind of guitar that Hendrix was trying to emulate more than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in a rock scenario, the guitar naturally suits it better anyway than like the harmonica taking those solos on. I just find I really like Hendrix's version because the translation, he kind of translates it roughly the same, doesn't he? You got solos in the same places. Hendrix's version also has a snare on every beat as well. I just found that there was a bit of a lack of intensity in Bob Dylan's version, or in, let's say, the original. There was a bit of lack of intensity in the original. And it's kind of like from bar 2, it gets to a level and it doesn't ever deviate from that level. It just stays there the whole song. Maybe maybe it goes up a tiny bit with the last harmonica solo and the drums, you know. But overall, it doesn't really deviate from that line. Whereas I love... Sorry, go on.
Well, I think the advantage of those stripped down versions of songs is you actually pay more attention to the lyrics.
And that's somehow what Dylan is. He's a poet.
I think so. Dylan as a storyteller, he's unbeatable. And the fact that his performance in studio was basically playing acoustic guitar, harmonica, and singing in a simple way makes you actually pay attention to the story. And the instruments don't kind of get in the way of the story in a certain way. Yeah. But what Hendrix did,
I was going to say that the way, so with everything you've said, Dylan is sort of, he's keeping you at this level because he wants you to focus maybe on the lyrics. Whereas Hendrix, I love the verses drop down a bit, and then when the solo is, the intensity comes back up, and then we go right down for that bridge section where it's just, you know, that really sort of psychedelic middle section before he kind of brings the solo back in, and it comes up and up, and then that ending, all along the watch, it's one of those things that kind of smacks you in the face. And I thought that is a hugely a huge factor in making Hendrix's version, I don't want to say better, but more rocky, you know, more accessible, because I think by the time you get to the 3rd minute of Dylan's song, if you're not interested in the lyrics, you might turn it off. Yeah. Whereas Hendrix's, the music leaves you no option, because when it goes down, you're like, oh god, what's coming next? And then he builds it up, the solo. I just think he's taken a song and he's translated it roughly in the same way, but he has played with the dynamics a lot, and I think it's paid off hugely.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those versions that he has turned the song into something completely different, better, and he made it his own song, to the point, and here comes the interesting story about it, to the point that Bob Dylan himself said he was influenced by Hendrix's performance of that song, and he played it as similar to that version as possible live. So he would ask his band to play like Hendrix's version of the song, incorporating the guitar elements. So basically, in his own words, I took license with the song from his version, actually, and continued to do it to this day. So he never played like the original anymore.
Isn't that a testament to not how great Hendrix is, but do you know what, man? When you say when you tell me things like this, it makes me so happy, because everyone thinks of, I don't know, what am I going to say here? Let me just think. Everyone thinks of these guys as being heroes and titans of music in their own world. They think, oh, Hendrix did this for guitar and rock and roll. Dylan did this for singing, songwriting, and lyric writing. But actually, we've just seen an example where Dylan did something, Hendrix loved it and took it to his side. Dylan loved his version of his song and took it to his side. It's like they're mingling. They're taking inspiration and influence from each other, even though all they're doing is one's taken one of his songs and he's done a different version, copied it again. I just love that, man. I love it when you hear these stories of musicians being influenced and not being against it. You know, so many people.
It's not competition.
No, I didn't like the cover they did of my song. No thanks. They're like, yeah, it was great. You know, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, why do more of that? You know, I mean, like, I think everyone should try to at least once in their careers to record a couple of someone else's song, and try to making something new out of it. And if people don't like it that much, they can still listen to the original. So it's like it's there. And I don't think there's a case of and like, think about it. How cool is this? Hendrix's bass player didn't like Hendrix's version, preferred Dylan's version, but Dylan himself prefers Hendrix version. So it's not a competition, and you can't please everyone. So I just think to conclude my comments on this song, for me, Hendrix made it like angry, energetic, and noisy. That's like the rock and roll spirit of his vocals and guitar. And I think his vocals just perfect in that song, and I think it was worth all the attempts and all the tracks and all the overdubs he did, and it sounds different from the very first bar. As soon as they start playing, so like, this is not Bob Dylan. It's something is a complete different thing, and he made the guitar solo part of the song. I can't think of that song. It has become a guitar song, isn't it? Yeah. It's like every guitar player needs to learn that riff, needs to learn those solos. So he turned a kind of folk song or a simple thing into a proper rock song where the guitar is more important than anything else. That's amazing. Really.
Exactly. I think I know the way we're going on this, but I'll ask anyway. The cover or the original?
I'm going to agree with the composer, with Bob Dylan.
So that's your excuse to get out of this one, isn't it? Yeah. No, I agree as well. Yeah, I think Hendrix's version just takes the really good lyrics, the really good songwriting, but it just elevates it to another level, doesn't it? Yes. The third track we're doing today is another one of those that is almost a copy and paste, but with a slightly different style. Mm-hmm. Now, this is Land of Confusion by Disturbed, the original song being by Genesis from 1986. Now, this is really interesting because I actually saw Disturbed a few weeks ago, the same day I saw Metallica, and they played this song live, and it's actually how I got into them. I think what the original does really well is the line between rock music and 80s synth pop is really blurred, because in places you've got that really, that intro riff. That's a rock riff. It's heavy. And then you think about the rhythms in the verse, on the synth. And I think he's done really clever there because they're using the 80s instruments, the synths, the keyboards, the effects and everything. And then they kind of mix it with the rock music. And that's what I really love about the original. But what this also says to me is how well it translates into heavy metal. Because if you think about the verse rhythms, it's so intricate that I'm going to mess it up, but it's something along the lines of, and man, stick that into a guitar amp, turn the guitar up, and you've got da-da-dang-dung-da-dung-da-dung. That's like a Slayer riff,
Yeah.
So it translates so well. And even the intro riff, do-da-do-da-do-da-do, very minor, very dissonant. It just suits a metal band covering it, doesn't it?
It does. I think, what I have on my notes here about this song? The lyrics are suitable for metal. The lyrics.
Yeah.
If you just read the lyrics, and if you just say them out loud, they sound very heavy metal to me.
Yeah.
And but Genesis was a rock band that became a pop band and changed like drastically from the 70s to the 80s. But they pretty much invented pop music as it is nowadays. So you can't blame them for being too pop at the time, because they were trying something that was new at the time, and everyone did the same after them. But I think from that version, what I like is the lyrics and the vocals more than anything else, because there's a relentless like electronic vibe throughout the song that I find quite boring.
In the Genesis one.
Yeah, but what I find amazing is, I think Phil Collins' vocals, they never disappointed me in any occasion. Everything he did with Genesis, everything he did in solo career. You might think some of the arrangements a bit like, they're a bit too 80s, or they don't sound cool or you don't like that vibe, but his vocals are always good. I don't remember a single studio or live version of any Phil Collins song that they don't sound amazing in terms of vocal performance. And I thought when I started listening to this, I might just also mention that I've never heard of this band.
Oh, really? Okay. They're quite a big metal band, not like Metallica levels or anything, but they're quite a well-known metal band.
Apparently they are, but I've never heard of them. So when the riff started, there was like, okay, right. They got it right from the beginning. They not changing the song essentially. Again, just like Metallica did with Thin Lizzy, they're just playing it with their own instruments and their own style, but not changing the riff. Not even the tempo sounds exactly the same. I might be wrong.
Right now, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's not overproduced. That's the other thing I notice about it. But when it goes to the bridge, it gets slightly more empty, more quiet on the bridge. And it sounds like the song was written by them, really. It's the one part that they have relies too much on electronic percussion with Genesis, and they just did, to use an overused word, they did it in a more organic fashion. It's a lot more organic than Genesis. And that's what I like. So I thought from the first bar that I would really enjoy the arrangements, but I was like, there's no way I'm going to like the vocals. I don't care who's singing this because Phil Collins is just one of my heroes, as a singer and drummer. And surprisingly, I was amazed by the vocals. I think he did a great job. I don't know the name of the singer. He did.
Yeah, his name's David Draymond. He's a producer as well. He's produced, for the metal fans out there, he's produced a lot of albums over the recent years. He's produced the last 2 Trivium albums. But yeah, he's got great vocals and he's kind of known for this kind of style. And I actually agree with you, man, about the bridge. I was going to say, I mean, this is going to kind of give away my answer at the end, but for me, the bridge is better in Disturbed's version. There's just like this, like you said, in the Genesis version, there's just this emptiness and this, like you said, overly reliant on the electronic and the effects and the synthesizer. And I just don't feel that, when you go to a bridge, I don't really want to feel like I'm dropping out of the song. And it's just like, this is another 30-second mini song within the song. I don't want that. No. I want to be taken to another place. And I think with, the Genesis bridge gets a lot better. Because when it goes another so long ago, and then that part comes in, it's really nice and it's uplifting. But with Disturbed, I feel like the transition from the chorus to the bridge and what you get in the bridge links much better to the rest of the song. Whereas with Genesis, it kind of drops out a bit. But yeah, I think it's a really good cover, to be honest.
I think so. And there's a proper metal guitar solo. It's not long, but it's proper, fast and melodic at the same time. So super cool. I like that. And I think the main element of the vocals for me is he's not trying to change it drastically. It's slightly more aggressive than Phil Collins' vocals, not much more. I think the instruments in the background, the guitar and all the distortion and all the metal vibe you have in the song is what makes the vocals sound a bit more aggressive, but he's not trying hard to sound like a metal singer. There's a lot of respect to the original vocal line in that song, that version. And I think, and that was what really surprised me. So my answer at the end.
Okay, all right. Okay, so original or cover?
Cover. I would love to hear Phil Collins' vocals with those arrangements.
Well, we've got to see if that's been done anywhere on the internet. Surprisingly, the guy who doesn't like metal that much has gone for the cover, and the guy who loves metal has gone for the original.
Oh, wow.
I think, like I said there, I think the Disturbed bridge is better. I think it just links the song much better. But I love Genesis, we know what happened in the 80s. No one talks about that. But although they were starting to popify, I love that they still kept that rock heritage with those rhythms in the verse, with that really dissonant intro. The lyrics, very political, very aggressive within themselves. So, and I don't know, Phil Collins, I haven't by any means listened to enough Genesis, but as you said, his vocal performance has always just left me. David Draymond, and I'm being nitpicky here. You know, I knew that I was going to say to Felipe today, let's, at the end of the episode, at the end of each song, let's choose which one we prefer. And so I was thinking, these are really close for me. What's going to decide it? And David Draymond, he just does a little too much with his vocals. And again, please remember, I love this cover. It's just I'm being overly picky. He goes like, so Phil Collins would say, "They say there's danger on our way." And David Draymond would go, "And they say there's danger on our way." And it's just like, I prefer the authenticity of just one note as opposed to a note with lots of movement.
Yeah.
I had to go to those levels of details to pick my favourite, so it's not a criticism. But yeah, I just love the original one of that one. It's a really cool one. Both bands are going to feature in subsequent cover episodes, because Disturbed have done a very famous cover of another famous old rock song, and Genesis have had another one of their songs covered by a new famous kind of pop metal band. So I'm sure they'll be there in subsequent episodes. So let's move on to the final song for this episode, and this one was chosen by Felipe. And it's another Dylan original, and it is "I Shall Be Released" by the band. Do you want to talk about this, Felipe? Go on, you kick it off.
Yeah. So I've played the song a few times in jam sessions and stuff like that. It's one of those that, yeah.
And have you played like a Dylan version of it?
No, whoever was singing version of it.
Okay.
So shout out to my friend Danny Rock, who comes to the jam sessions and plays that stuff, and he plays blues and country and all the stuff. And he played that song with me a couple of times, and he introduced me to some of the band stuff as well. And yeah, that is an interesting one, because the first tapes of that song were actually recorded with Bob Dylan and the band, right?
That's right, yeah.
So for those who are not familiar with the band, they were one of the best bands at that time, and they were also like session musicians for famous singers and songwriters.
We did an episode on the band. Yeah, I think it was episode 20 or 21 or 22. So go back and check that out to learn about it.
Check it out. So I say, what's your favorite band? The band. Which band? The band. The band. That band. The band. The band. So the band.
Myself and Felipe always advocated that the band should have called their first single "The Song" and their first album "The Album," so that you could say, "Oh, what song are you listening to? The song." Well, from what album? The album. By which band? The band.
Yeah, it's a shame that they missed the trick there.
They missed the trick there, didn't they?
Yeah, that would have been the best joke in music history. But so they were recording with Dylan, right? And there's some...
But they were his musicians, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So they were like the backing band for him. And so I imagine how much of their ideas were part of Bob Dylan's writing of that song, but but what really matters is Dylan released it first, right, without any of them in the recording. Am I right? Because
I don't know.
Well, you think the first release is the one you sent me?
No. I think the band's
released first. Okay, that was it.
And then there has been subsequent recordings. So there is. So the band, not in my opinion, to my knowledge, the band released "I Shall Be Released" in 1968 or 9, but years later there was an album called "The Basement Tapes," Bob Dylan and the band, which had all of their old sessions recorded, and from those sessions, that's where "I Shall Be Released" was supposedly written. And there is somewhere an old bootleg. No. Do you know what? I'm wrong. That there is a version recorded from 67, but it will. Sorry, no, I'm not wrong. I'm getting myself confused. There is a version that's
it's
recorded.
Confusing.
It is, yeah. The band? What band? There is a version recorded by Dylan with the band singing backing vocals that was recorded from those sessions in 67, but it wasn't released. The band then recorded on their own "I Shall Be Released" in 68 or 69 and released it. And then years later, in a bootleg album, Dylan released his version with the band singing it. That first version, but it only released.
This just got so confusing now. So "I Shall Be Released" was released, and the band playing with Bob Dylan's the band. So it's just, it's just
too many appropriate words.
Yeah, exactly. It's so difficult. So basically, Dylan wrote the song, but his version wasn't the first one to be released. I'm still going to call his version the original. Right?
Definitely, yeah, because he wrote it. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, so the link between them are the vocal harmonies, because I found them pretty much the same. So his version of it has the band singing, and they are amazing singers. That's one thing that must be said about them. They are simply perfect with vocal harmonies, and that's the main thing about the song for me. That their version of it is vocals and piano. There's like some simple melodies on the piano in the background, and it makes it so beautiful. So, I have a feeling that they kind of wanted to make it more sad than dark, because it's not a happy song. I mean, there's a bit of I think when they singing, there's a certain feeling of hope. Their version of it is slightly more cheerful, in my opinion.
Can I let you into something?
Yeah.
And all the listeners as well. This is really interesting because of what you just said. Wow, 3 years ago now. So 2020, I was going through some really bad stuff mentally. I had my mental health was very bad. And actually, there is only one song that I can give credit to getting me through it, and it was the band's cover of "I Should Be Released."
See, because that's that hope, isn't it?
There's two reasons. The first one is that, like you said, the song has hope within it, and the melodies are just so beautiful. And Richard Manuel's voice, my God, he was the piano player for the band, and he's doing the lead vocals on this one. For those who don't know, the band all kind of switched doing lead vocals. On one song, it would be the drummer. On the next song, it would be the guitarist, then the bass player, then the piano player. They all switched. Richard Manuel's falsetto vocals here, they're just such a beauty to it, such a poignancy, such an emotion. And I think, the first few lyrics kind of evoke, I don't know if this is what it's mean, but no, they say, what's the lyric about the man? I forgot. They say every man needs protection. They say every man must fall. And I just remember hearing that when I was having my bad time and thinking, I don't know, it's linked to me with men's mental health and everything. And the second thing was Richard Manuel himself killed himself. He died of suicide from severe depression. And I just remember thinking, how, and I was really into the band at this point. I was reading about how emotional and upset everyone was at his passing. And I just thought, you know what, man, this depression, this bad mental health, it's not worth it. And it's kind of like I almost climbed out of this hole.
Yeah.
And I've honestly got this song to thank for it. It's crazy. I don't know if anyone else can relate. If one song really helped you get out of something bad, but I really can say that this song did it. So I was really surprised and happy to see when you've chosen it. But I'd never myself, I've never thought, oh, this song gives me hope. But you're right.
Yeah,
it kind of evokes a hopefulness, doesn't it?
It's the way they play and how soft the vocal is.
Yeah, but how powerful they all are together, isn't it?
Exactly. That just gives you hope, makes your day better, Yeah. So it's just, but it's, for me, still essentially sad. But if it sounds darker without them playing.
I feel
when
like...
you hear I'm talking about Hendrix. When you hear Dylan playing it, and it's not, it doesn't make me feel hope in that sense. But it makes you think about how amazing Bob Dylan is as a songwriter, that so many people want to record his stuff. And
in the two, sorry, I was just going to say, in the first two band albums, there's one called Music from Big Pink and one which is actually behind Felipe right over there, called it's called the Brown Album or the Band. There's 3 Dylan covers on it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get the others in eventually onto the subsequent episodes of these. But yeah, that just shows how much they were influenced. They broke away from Dylan. They wanted to write their own music. They played with a bunch of other guys as well. Sonny Rollins, they were due to play with Ronnie Hawkins, Bob Dylan, many other people. And they just became too good that they wanted to go and write their own music. And in their first 2 albums, they've done 3 Dylan covers. That is a testament to Dylan and his songwriting, his lyric writing. He's just brilliant, isn't he? Forget his vocals. He, as a poet, is brilliant.
And that's why when you've mentioned, let's do the first episode of cover songs. The first 2 songs that came to my head were Dylan songs. Not even that wasn't the criteria. That was
no, it wasn't. And what was the first song you mentioned at the start of this episode? Knocking on Heaven's Door.
Yes, no, yes, exactly. I know. My God, this is a Dylan episode.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, yeah. So yeah, exactly. Which is an amazing song, and Guns N' Roses did the same sort of stuff. We can cover that song in another episode.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's just the fact that a good musician can capture the essence of a song and the feeling behind it and turn into something, maybe not something else, but something more powerful. It's just like in those cases, like for me, the band and Hendrix, they were amplifying the feeling of the original versions of those songs and adding some elements to it.
It's funny because I think for me that in that song, the piano is just the most important part. Just there is such an atmosphere generated just from that one note, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a bit high. Dun, 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 and it just sits there for like a bar and a half just with this one note, and you're sat there going, shit, what's happening here? And then dun, da, 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 dun, they say, and then it goes into the song. It's just so beautiful, man. I remember when I first heard it, I was just like, I get goosebumps thinking about it. Forget what the song did for me. I'm saying just the song on its own, hearing those vocals combined for the chorus.
You know what? I'm going to listen to the song 10 times in a row as soon as we finish this.
You know, I wonder how big my play count is, because honestly, bro, like I said, when my days were dark years ago, I just had to repeat.
Original or cover?
Cover for me, I have to say 100%. I don't want to just shit on Dylan, but I did have some negatives. I just don't like. I felt there isn't a consistency or flow with his vocals. He does this like, they say everything can be erased. Like I just found there was just it's hard to flow with the way he sometimes.
I have a feeling that he wanted to release as much as possible. Like release a song after another. And the producers were not really keen to do too much work on it. It's like, he's a genius. Whatever he releases is going to be a hit. So just keep pushing for more and more releases instead of producing songs. There's many writers have said the same about Dylan, that he was not produced to the level he deserved as well. So, but
cover for me. What about you? Original or cover?
Cover. So what's the final score then? We did.
Is that what we're going to do? I thought. You're right.
I don't know. No, the covers or the originals winning today?
Right. So, keep track of your scores. So for me, the first one I went cover. What did you do?
The first. What was the first?
Let's keep the jar.
Original.
Oh, no, sorry, I went original.
No, you went original.
Yeah, original.
We got to take note. No, that's going to be confusing. I'm going to get pen and paper because we need.
And we're going to accumulate all these, and then when we get to hopefully episode 9 or 10 of the covers episodes, we'll have a massive list.
The
covers are up by 50 to 37. That'd be cool.
That's very stupid, but we're doing it anyway. So the first one, Thing Lizzy, you said
original for me, original for you.
2 for the original.
Yep, for the second one, both of us went covers.
Aha.
For the third one, we went one each.
Which one? What's the third one?
Land of Confusion.
Right.
And then for the fourth one, we both went for the cover.
Okay, so the covers are winning today. 1,
there
2, 3, 4, 5. 5-3. So
there you go. Perfect.
So that's an interesting thing. Like that's what happens in rock music. People discover songs, or they want to pay tribute to their heroes. Probably they know they're going to be compared to the original ones. So good musicians, they work hard to make their versions as remarkable as possible, isn't it? And do you have a favorite one though out of the covers? Which one do you think is like much better than the original?
I'd have to say I Shall Be Released, because I don't like the original song. I can appreciate it, but I just thought the melody was a bit all over the place. The way he sings then again, it's a bootleg we're hearing, so I don't want to judge him on that. Maybe, like you said, had he been produced more, had he had more time to refine it, it might have sounded better. But with the information we have, I Shall Be Released is my favorite.
I would go for All Along the Watchtower.
Oh yeah, it's hard. Hard.
Just because it became a guitar song, it wasn't a guitar song. It became a
he created something completely different out of nothing, didn't he? Really. So Excellent stuff. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this one. Because have you enjoyed it, bro? Because I really have.
That is one of the most enjoyable recordings we ever.
Should we do more of them? We'll do maybe like one every couple of months, once a month.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. Cool. All right, we'll do
totally
that.
For it. Hopefully, people are going to send some suggestions, right?
That's what we need from you guys. You know, we you know, I'm sure you guys keep tuning in, you keep listening to us. So I'm sure we're doing something right. But in this instance, I'm sure you guys don't want to just hear our thoughts. I bet you guys want to know what we think of your favorite cover. So send it. Tell us, send us on the Facebook Messenger. Put them on the comments on YouTube. Tell us under Instagram in the comments as well. Tell us the covers that you love, that you want us to talk about. And maybe, in an episode, we'll do one of mine, one of Felipe's, two of yours. Two of mine, one of Felipe's, one of yours. Just let us know. And, like I said, if the cover suits the narrative of this show, then we will definitely get it in. But yeah, thank you again for joining us. Please follow us on all the socials so you can keep up to date with the information. We are at Long Live RNR Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you're watching this, then please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button as well, so you can keep up to date and tune in with all the videos.
Yeah, as I'm a really offline guy, I'm just going to say, hit all the buttons you can see on the screen. No, if there's a dislike one, don't hit that one.
Felipe, shut up, Felipe.
Subscribe to whatever, and find us on the internet, I think we should say. And thanks for being with us once again, and keep on rocking, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, and long live rock and roll.